So in the last lecture, we have discussed about the urine concentration and dilution. In that, we have seen about the role of aldosterone and the role of ADH and its action on the P cells or nephron. After that, we have also seen about the countercurrent mechanism. We have discussed about the vasa recta as a countercurrent exchanger. Again, we have seen about the role of ADH and the mechanism of ADH secretion and involvement of the central nervous system in the secretion of ADH. Now today we are going to discuss about the glomerular filtration rate, that is the GFR, and what are the factors which affects GFR. Along with, we will see about the some diuretics, so which are responsible for the urine excretion, sodium excretion, potassium excretion, and all that things we will discuss it later on. So, but today we are going to mainly discuss about the GFR and factor affecting GFR. Now, just we will recall back yesterday's lecture. So, in that we have discussed about the tubular fluid osmolarity and the plasma osmolarity and the role of ADH. So here, just I have drawn one nephron, and here you can see the glomerulus and whatever the filtration it is coming into the Bowman's capsule. If you consider that whatever the fluid is filtered here and the osmolarity of that, so this fluid which is filtered into the proximal tubules, so this fluid is called as tubular fluid. When you see the osmolarity of this tubular fluid, when it get filtered from the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule, so the osmolarity of this fluid is 300. And what is the osmolarity of plasma? So we will consider here, suppose the osmolarity of the plasma is 300. So but when this fluid it comes down, so here on the proximal tubules, there are some specialized cells. So these cells used to reabsorb the sodium, bicarbonate, glucose, amino acid, chlorides, and other solutes. So here, when this filtrate fluid comes down at the end of the proximal tubule, so what will be the osmolarity? It will increase or decrease. So we have discussed in the last lecture. Here, the osmolarity of this tubular fluid it doesn't change, because in the medical literature, the terminology here is used that the tubular fluid or the solutes which are reabsorbed in the proximal tubules, the solutes and solvents, they are absorbed isoosmotically. So they are absorbed here in the proximal tubule isoosmotically. It means that these solutes and solvents, they are absorbed into the interstitium in the same proportion. So that's why here the osmolarity it never changes. So in the normal physiological conditions. But when this fluid it comes to the descending part of thin part of loop of Henle, then the osmolarity of the tubular fluid it gets increases. So here, suppose 300, it becomes 600, 800, 1000, and up to the 1200. So here, when it fluid it comes down, so we will make one equation that the tubular fluid, the osmolarity is 300 and the plasma osmolarity is 300. So 300 by 300 equal to 1. Correct. But when here this, this area up to this, it is water permeable. That's why it loses water and it increases the osmolarity of this tubular fluid due to the excretion of water from this part of the nephron. Right. So when this fluid get transferred to the descending loop of inlet, right? So when it comes to this thick part of the descending loop of inlet, then the osmolarity it gets decreased. Right. So you know the mechanism how this osmolarity is decreased, because here some special proteins are present. So that proteins are nothing but they are the sodium potassium ATPase. So due to this, whatever the concentration or osmolarity it get increased near about 1200, slowly it goes to here when fluid comes, it becomes 200. Right. Thus the fluid it gets upper to the distal cannulated tubule. The osmolarity of tubular fluid is 100. So we can say it also becomes near about 60 milliosmoles per liter. Right. So the osmolarity becomes very less when the fluid reaches to the distal cannulated tubule. So we can make the equation that is dF upon P equal to less than 1. It means tubular fluid it becomes 100. So 100 and the plasma osmolarity is 300. So here 100 upon 300 it means it is less than 1. Right. So again we are discussing about the effect of or the action effect of this ADH on the osmolarity of the tubular fluid. So what will happen in the presence of ADH and in the absence of ADH to the tubular fluid and the plasma osmolarity? So first we have discussed about, so here there are some specialized cells which are present in the last part of the nephron. So where it is known as in the papillary regions. So here there are some receptors which are present on the basolateral membrane. So on the basolateral membrane, there are some receptors. Yesterday we have discussed about the serpentine receptors. So here the ADH it binds to this ADH receptor, right? And this receptor will enter into the cell, and so it will make some water channel into this lumen of this nephron, and this water will move from the nephron into the interstitium. So last time we have discussed into the details the aquaporins, how these water channels are formed by the means of ADH. So it is a very long cycle. So there is cyclic anhydrase and the formation, and there is deposition of the aquaporin into the lumen of the nephron, and there is a formation of water channel. So here there is a formation of water channels, and these water channels right? So whatever the water is present into the lumen, so it will come through this. So these are the water channels. So H2O it will come, and in the presence of ADH, in the presence of ADH, right? So here the concentration will increase or decrease because water is losing here, right? So here the concentration will increase, and first it will become the PM upon P equal to first 1. Right. After that, when there is a more water absorption into this here, more water is going outside, right? So here there is, so PF upon P is greater than 1, right? So it will become greater than 1. So what will happen in the absence of this ADH? If there is no ADH, then the value of in absence of ADH, there is a no formation of this water channels, right? Then there is a no loss of this water from this tubular fluid, right? So here then in presence of the ADH, the urea increase of mobility, right? So in presence of ADH, the osmolarity of urine it increases, right? With small volume of water, large volume of water. So water will also come along with this concentration. So, but in the absence of this, in the absence of the ADH, right? So there is no water reabsorption into the interstitium. Then water will also come, and the PF upon plasma equal to what will happen? It will be less than 1 in the absence of ADH. The value of the tubular fluid is less than 1. Are you with me? Are you getting? So here this mechanism has not given into the book. So I have a reference from the ground. So if you want to see this mechanism into some medicine books or some pathology books, you will get this mechanism. So here the concentration of tubular fluid and plasma osmolarity, here by this equation you can find out. So it will be the osmolarity of the tubular fluid is less than 1 or it is more than 1 in presence and in absence of ADH. So now we will turn to our next discussion, that is known as the GFR. Known as GFR, glomerular filtration rate. So now we are going to discuss about the GFR. So here GFR, right? So to know the GFR, first we should know how much amount of blood it get filtered per minute, per hour, and per day. So GFR is depend upon the cardiac output. So how much is the cardiac output? So cardiac output is near about 5 to 6 liter per minute. So here this cardiac output, if you see here is the nephron. Here is the glomerulus, right? So here the cardiac output suppose for example 5 liters. Cardiac output is 5 liters. And from this cardiac output, how much blood is supplied to the kidney? So we can say that from the cardiac output, only 20% is supplied to the kidney. That is means from 5 liter, if you take the 20%. So 20%. So here from this 5 liters, it is 20% is supplied to kidney. So 20% is how much ml? It is 1 liter, means 1 liter. It is 1 liter. 1 liter means it is 1000. This 1000 ml is 400 ml is cells and 600 ml is plasma. Are you with me? Right. So cardiac output we have considered it as 5 liters, and from this cardiac output only 20% is supplied to the kidney. So in this 20%, 20% of 5 liter is 1 liter. 1 liter is it is that is 1000 ml, and from this 1000 ml, so 400 is the cells and 600 is plasma. So here this is coming here, right? This is coming here, and 400 it cells it pass away, and 600 it gets returned, and 600 it gets returned. Right. So from this 600, only 20%. From this 600, only 20% it gets into Bowman's capsule. Right. So here, on from this 600, only 20% it is getting to the Bowman's capsule. Actual filtration is means it is 120, means it is 120 ml. So here 120 ml per minute. Right. So again we will go to the from starting. The GFR depends upon the cardiac output in normal subject, normal physiology. So all of you know the cardiac output is 5 to 6 liters. We have considered it is 5 liters. From these 5 liters, only 20% is supplied to the glomerulus or the kidney. So from the kidney, only from this only 1 liter, that is 20%, that is 1 liter is supplied to the glomerulus. And in this 1 liter, that is 1000 ml, 400 is the cells and 600 is the plasma, which is coming to the glomerular capillaries for the filtration. So 400 is the cells, so 1000 minus 400 equals 600. 600 is this plasma, and from the glomerulus, which is going to filter, that is only 20%. So 20% is actual coming after filtration to the Bowman's capsule. So here 20% of 1000 means 600 means it is 120 ml. So GFR is 120 ml per minute. Right. So here now we are going to the factor affecting GFR. So GFR equal to 120 ml per minute. If you consider it as a 6 liter as a cardiac output, then it becomes 125 ml per minute. If you consider 5 liters, so it comes 120 ml per minute. So 6 liter, so here becomes 675, here becomes 375, and here becomes 125 ml per liter. Right. So as per to the GK part, so they have given the GFR is 125 ml per minute. So here we have considered this 5 liter, that's why it comes, it is 120 ml per minute. So now we are going to the next, that is the factors affecting GFR. So what are the factors affecting GFR? So one terminology is there, net filtration pressure. Net filtration pressure. So what is this net filtration pressure? So pressure forcing that out and the pressure pulling that in. So here, right? So when the fluid gets filtered, suppose here, right? Okay. So here the pressure which is forcing inside to the capillaries or for the Bowman's capsule we will consider here Bowman's capsule. So that is called as the pressure forcing in, and for the, if you want to calculate the coefficient of this filtration, so first you should know what are the factors which used to affect the net filtration pressure. So what is net filtration pressure? Pressure forcing out minus pressure forcing in. So it will give you the net filtration pressure. Are you with me? Pressure forcing out minus pressure forcing in, it will give you the net filtration pressure. So here net filtration pressure, so pressure forcing in minus pressure forcing out. Right. So what are the pressures? So here pressure forcing in. Right. But when the fluid comes here, right? Okay. So I will draw this 120. Okay. So it comes like this. Right. So when it does, it is a very narrow space. Okay. So this filter, this pressure, it forces it back. Right. So when it coming the here, right? So it is a funnel like structure and pressure forces out. Pressure forces in and pressure forces out. So here the pressure force out. Right. So net filtration pressure is pressure forcing in minus pressure forcing out. So here there are some forces which affects the glomerular filtration. So one first pressure is called as the glomerular hydrostatic pressure. So here whatever the fluid is coming, so here in the glomerulus, right? So when the fluid is coming here, fluid is coming here, right? So this fluid also, so it generates pressure. So these are the hydrostatic pressure. So this is called as the glomerular hydrostatic pressure. So glomerular hydrostatic pressure. So it forces fluid towards the Bowman's capsule. So from this, it also it comes like this. So here it comes like this. So it comes like this. So here this forces. So this force is called as the glomerular hydrostatic pressure. So this is how much is this glomerular hydrostatic pressure? Glomerular hydrostatic pressure. So here glomerular pressure. So glomerular hydrostatic pressure is equal to 55 millimeter of mercury. Number one. So this affects the glomerular filtration. Number two is colloidal pressure. Colloidal oncotic pressure. So here colloidal oncotic pressure. So it is about 30 mmHg. So this colloidal osmotic oncotic pressure is exerted by the albumin. So this pressure is UNCER exerted by number three is fluid flow through the funnel-like space that is called as the capsule hydrostatic pressure. So here this is called as the capsule hydrostatic pressure. So this is about equal to 15 millimeters of mercury, and the fourth one is called as the capsule osmotic pressure. So here the at the end of different atriums, the pressure is 0. It is called as the capsule osmotic pressure. Capsule osmotic pressure is equal to 0. So from this you can find out the actual GFR. So here we will see by doing this equation. By doing this equation, we will see about the GFR. So here glomerular hydrostatic pressure. Glomerular hydrostatic pressure is plus colloidal osmotic pressure. So this becomes 55 plus 0. This 55 and this and this plus 0 equal to 55 minus that is 30 plus 50 minus 30 plus 50 is equal to 10 millimeters of Ag. So net filtration pressure is equal to 10 millimeters of Ag. Right. So again, we will see this. So any fluctuation in this net filtration pressure is directly proportional to the GFR, right? So here, when there is any alteration or the fluctuation into these pressures, so it will directly affect the GFR. So it is this GFR is directly proportional to the net filtration pressure, right? So again, we will go through. So first pressure which is generating here, one is the glomerular hydrostatic pressure into the glomerulus. It is 55 millimeters of mercury. Number two, the colloidal oncotic pressure. So it is generated in the Bowman's capsule. So it is exerted by the albumins, so proteins and albumins. Number three, the capsule hydrostatic pressure. So here, whatever the pressure, it is generated into the funnel-like structure due to the filtration, accumulation of the filtrate. Number four is the capsule oncotic pressure. So here at the end, the pressure is less. So when it gets filtered, the from the glomerulus, so here the pressure is very less. It is 0. So we find out the net filtration pressure. So which is directly proportional to the GFR. So these are the four pressure which affect the GFR. So this glomerular hydrostatic pressure plus capsular oncotic pressure. So this osmotic pressure, this 55 plus 0 equal to 55 minus this 30, that is the colloidal oncotic pressure, and one is the capsular hydrostatic pressure, it is 50. So total 55 minus 45, it is 10 millimeters of Hg. So here the net filtration pressure is 10 millimeters of Hg. Right. So up to this is clear to you. So here first we have seen the GFR is 125 millimeters, 120 ml per minute, and now we have seen the factor affecting GFR, that is net filtration pressure. So other some are factors which affects the GFR. So here some factors we will see again. First is the surface area and permeability. The surface area and permeability. Surface area and permeability. So here I will draw this. So in the first picture, the surface area here it is very small, right? So this surface area also affects the filtration. So here the surface area, suppose in the other one, so here, so this. So surface area is also responsible for GFR, right? So what happens in the diabetic nephropathy? So in the diabetic nephropathy, so all of you know there are some epithelial cells, or sorry, endothelial cells. Endothelial cells here which are present in the glomerulus. So what happens in this diabetic nephropathy? So here it accumulates. There is a depositions of some fats, some proteins on the surface of these endothelial cells of these capillaries. Right. So due to that, there is a less filtration, and the function of these cells will get deployed. And due to this, there is a less area deposition of filters in between these cells. Suppose, for example, so this is one cell, the another cell. From here, the filtration is going on. So here there is a deposition of some fats, proteins. Yeah. So it affects the filtration area. There is a very small seat for filtration. So in the diabetic nephropathy, so it affects the endothelial cells. So it decreases the surface area for the filtration. It also affects the nephropathy. GFR. So in case of permeability, the glomerular nephritis. So there are some filter channels which are present here on this here. The channels will get affects. Right. So in nephropathy, so these channels are decreased. So it affects the glomerular filtration. So they decrease the permeability in case of glomerular nephritis and in diabetic nephropathy. It directly affects the filtration surface area. So now we will try to find out the coefficient, filtration coefficient. So GFR equal to net filtration pressure into filtration coefficient. So the factor which increase the glomerular hydrostatic pressure. So just now we have discussed about the glomerular hydrostatic pressure. So when the blood pressure is increased, the glomerular hydrostatic pressure is also increased. So when there is a decrease in blood pressure, yes, there is decrease in glomerular hydrostatic pressure. So what happens to the capsular oncotic pressure? So increase in protein. So when there is a multiple myeloma, there is increase in protein. So increase in colloidal oncotic pressure. So when there is a decrease in the protein concentration, there is a decrease in the colloidal oncotic pressure. So one is the capsular hydrostatic pressure. So in renal calculus. So in renal calculus, here I will try to show you. So here it decreases, it increases the capsular osmotic hydrostatic pressure. So here, suppose here is the nephron. So here is the nephron. It's going to the nephron. So here, when there is a calculus, right? So then it's coming. So here it is the calculus in this one. So the pressure, so the fluid is getting here. So the fluid is stuck, and the fluid it comes and it generates the pressure. Right. So if there is a calculus in this, the fluid will go reverse. So this causes the capsular hydrostatic pressure. So this is called as the hydronephritis. One is we have discussed the glomerular nephritis. One is the number 2 diabetic nephritis. Number 3, we have hydronephrosis. Due to renal calculus. Right. So in renal calculus, so it increases the capsular hydrostatic pressure. So here today we have discussed about the tubular fluid osmolality and the plasma osmolality and the role of pH, the GFR, factor affecting GFR, and now we are going to see about some factors which affects the urine output. So in some disorders or in some renal disorders, so the doctors used to recommend some drugs that may affect the urine outputs. So one terminology that is known as the natremia, that is natriuria. So what terminology it is known as the natriuria or NAD, that is sodium increase in urine. Right? Or other term that is known as the diuretics. Known as the diuretics. So here the NATE diuretics, natriuretics and diuretics. Right. So natriuretics, which increases sodium output in the urine. So it also we can use the terminology that is increased loss of sodium into the urine, that is called as the natriuretics. And diuretics. So diuretics are the agents which increases urine volume or which increases the urine output, that are known as the diuretics. So most of the drugs which increase the sodium output in the urine, as well as it increases the water output also, it means they are natriuretics as well as diuretics. Suppose for any drug, so which is acting as the natriuretics, it also acts as a diuretics. So it also increases the sodium output into the urine, and it also increases the water output into the urine. So it acts as a both, that is the natriuretics as well as diuretics. So we will try to understand about the what is the effect of these agents and what is the role of nephron in the process of reabsorption of sodium, chloride, potassium, and water. So I want to know about one thing that, so here we are talking about the filtration. So near about that is the 20% is getting filtered here into the Bowman's capsule. So from this we have studied that most of the sodium ions, they are reabsorbed at the proximal tubules, that is, and most of the that is amino acid, glucose, chloride, they are reabsorbed near about 99 to 100%. So here nephron is a very that is chemical machinery. We can say it as which is located in our body. So whatever the material which is coming into the nephron, so it get filtered and which is required for the body. So it is again reabsorbed. So from that, the material or the substances which are essential for our body tissues or for our body or the blood, so that get reabsorbed again. So nephron is a very good chemist. We can say that he is a very good chemist. Then whatever the substances which are required or essential for our body, it does not allow to use it into the urine. So here we can say that it is a master machine in our body that can restore our essential, that is the what you say the essential solutes for our body. So first in that we will see about the how this nephron used to work into the reabsorption process of these solutes of essential materials for our body. So you know, I will try to draw one diagram here of the nephron. Again and again, we have to draw this nephron, and we have to study the different segment of this nephron and the functions of this nephron. Different functions of different segments of the nephron. So here, so this one, right? So here it is the thin part. This is hairpin-like structure. So it is not hairpin-like structure, which I have drawn, but it is hairpin-like structure. So again, it becomes thick and distinct connulated tubule descending and the collecting ducts. Right. So here, first we will study about these cells which are present on the proximal tubule. Afterwards, some cells are also present here. Some cells are also present here. Some cells are also present here, and some cells are also present here. Right. So first, we will see this here our circulatory system, right? From the circulatory system, this blood is coming. It is near about 5 liters. From this 5 liters, only that is 20% is going to the kidney, and from this 20%, so suppose from this 1000, so 600 is coming here. From this 600, it is 20% coming here. Right. In this 20%, there are some sodium ions, some bicarbonate ions, some chloride ions, some potassium ions are there. But today only we will discuss about how the sodium is reabsorbed into the body. So first we should know about the physiology of this cells or of this part. So here I will draw a big cell, and from that you can understand the suppose this is proximal tubule and this is one cell. So on this part here it is called as this part. It is called as the luminal side. It is called as the luminal side. This part is called as the basolateral side. Basolateral side. Right. So here this is also luminal side, and here this is luminal side. Here also this is luminal side. So nature has made a very good arrangement for the reabsorption of most of the fluid, which is essential for our body. So here we are today studying about the sodium reabsorption. So we are going to study about the first physiology of the cell. So here this side is proximal tubule, and the this side of this cell, it is called as the luminal side, and this side it is called as the basolateral side. On this basolateral side, so again adjacent to this there are some cells. Here also there are some cells. So I have made a large, but there are cells. There are hundreds of cells, thousands of cells, right? So each cell is having different functions. So here, so some proteins are present on the luminal side, and some proteins are also present on the basolateral side. Some proteins are also present on the luminal side of the cell, and some proteins are also present on the basolateral side of the cell. But these proteins are having different functions, and these proteins are having different role at the different segment of the nephron. So if 99% we are saying that reabsorb, and only 1% of solute is coming here, right? So we are talking about that is 120 ml. So we are talking about that the 99% is reabsorbed. So how much of urine is coming here in 1 minute? Urine in ml. So here from this 120 ml, or 120 ml, only 1 ml is coming. Means 99% of the solute and the solvent, it is again reabsorbed by the nephron. So how it is very nice, very good arrangement in the in our body or the kidney, so that it does not allow to lose any solute from our body, which is essential for the normal function of our body. So if you calculate that, so how much urine can be formed in 1 minute? So here the answer, hypothetical answer is it is 1 ml, right? So if you calculate the how much amount of urine is formed in 1 day, so in 1 minute we are talking about here 120 mg is 120 ml per minute. So from this 120 ml, so how much urine is formed? It is 1 ml. If you calculate, so in 1 minute that is 60 minutes, right? In 1 day, how much minutes? So 60 into 24, so it is 1440, right? So if you calculate that in 1 minute it is 1 ml, so in day it is 1444, 1440. That means in normal person we used to excrete near about 1.5 liters per day. How much urine? 1.5 liters per day. It is a normal one. So again, we will see what is the normal and abnormal urination, or the urine formation or urine output. If you see this diagram, right? So here, so we are saying that 1.5 it is normal one. 1.5 it is normal one. So less than 500 ml, less than 500 ml. If consider as oliguria and more than 3,500 ml, more than it is called as oliguria. It is called as oliguria, and in between this, sometimes, so it is called as the normal. So it is normal. So it also depends upon the climate temperature input of the fluid by that person. So here, if you urinate near about 1.5 liters urine per day, it is a normal. But if you excrete less than 500 ml, then it is considered as a oliguria. And if you excrete near about 3,500, more than 3,500 ml, then it is considered as a polyuria. So in one day, it is we consider as 60 minutes, and in one day, so that is 60 into 24, it is near about 1440 minutes. Suppose we have considered here 1 ml in 1 minute. So how much ml in one day? It is 1400, means it is near about 1.5 liters, right? So nephron are the master processor or the master chemist, we can say. So again, we will go to that urine output. So near about 1 ml per minute. So I think today we will stop here, and we are trying to discuss about the sodium urea absorption because of the time duration. So it is not possible to complete all these things in one lecture. So again, we are going to take 2-3 lectures before your exam, and we will try to finish off this renal system. So today we conclude our topic, and we should stop.